gentlemen, wrong side of the pond. He is DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance. It is a beautiful, cold Tuesday night here in Ohio. I'm sipping bourbon. I don't know what you're sipping. I'm sipping a bourbon, and I don't know, man. We talked about it just a minute ago off air. We were probably not going to do a podcast this week because there wasn't like a crazy amount of stuff happen. The FA Cup has kind of been a whatever. But then Monday, just all hell broke loose as it finally happened. They finally fired Frank.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot last week about the prospects of this.
Yeah, because we thought we were hours away from that happening last week.
Turns out we were days, and the man that we predicted would fall into that seat that is the ever-revolving door at Chelsea ended up being Thomas Tuchel. So we nailed it aside from timing. Yeah. But of course, the rest of the world knew that as well. It's not like we had any or sort of inside access, but yeah, it happened, and it gave us a little bit of extra stuff to talk about in a weekend that we normally would have just been like, hey, let's take this weekend off. We'll roll a few, these match days together as we bleed into these multiple match day weeks that we've become accustomed to in this new COVID season. And it's given us a little bit more to talk about because the reaction to Frank losing his job has been not only swift, but also widespread. And it seems like everyone kind of has an opinion on it. So it's nice that we've got at least something to talk about this week, even if it's going to be like 95% Frank Lampard.
That's how I like everything, to be at least 95% Frank Lampard. I don't know. Do we have a fantasy update?
Yeah, we do.
Are we going straight into this?
No, unfortunately, we do have a fantasy update. It's bad news for both of us. We both fell. I went 10 places down to 43rd. You fell 4 places back to 81st. That's where you were a week ago. So everything, went downhill for us. What remains good is for Tyler Kelly. His Ole's can't drive remains on top 6 shows in a row for him. So bad week for us, good week for Tyler Kelly. There's your fantasy update. And let's move our way back over to Frank and his departure from Chelsea. Again, no one's surprised here. And I'm going to paraphrase what Steven Gerrard, his long-term kind of antithesis, foil, whatever you want to call it.
Manufactured nemesis.
Yeah. But even he said, we all believe Frank should get more time. This is a project. He's a young guy. But this is Chelsea, and this is what we expect. And when you see these types of quotes come through from these players who know, and all these other people in the game who know, it does it like you want to get mad at Chelsea. You want to get frustrated by it, and I'm sure you probably are more than the average fan might be. But it is it's so expected here.
Exactly. And I think I railed on this a lot last week. Like, should he be given more time? Absolutely. Will he? No, because this is the cycle that Chelsea has been in. I mean, you talk about, Thomas Tuchel being dropped into this ever revolving managerial seat. He was only given an 18-month contract today. That's all he signed.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like he's going to be exposed to the same risk that Lampard was exposed to. You don't take the Chelsea job.
He's immediately on the clock.
Yeah, you don't take the Chelsea job and not expect to be on your ass 18 months later, right? Like, I think that comes with the territory. And if you make it beyond that, great. Like, you've achieved something that few people have managed to do, but it doesn't make it any more wrong. It doesn't make it any less palatable. I think it's a tough one. Like, I don't care. I want Chelsea to fail, as a fan might.
Awesome.
But I don't. No one wants their club to be run this way, but it's just the reality that is Chelsea.
It is, and yeah, I think there was that glimmer of hope that, like, because it was Frank, because of his history with the club, because he's a legend, because he's so beloved. I mean, you saw the shed end banner put up over the weekend for the FA Cup match, where the whole shed was in support of Lampard getting more time. You thought because of who he was going to be the guy that broke this crazy cycle of just the turn and burn, quick in, quick out. The second you're not performing, you're gone. The second players are not digging it, you're gone. Just remove themselves from that vicious cycle. And if it's not going to happen for Frank Lampard, who is it going to happen for? And you know, I felt this way. It's also kind of a weird one with Tuchel. Like, and I haven't fully even had time to formulate like how I feel about Tuchel being the manager now. We'll kind of get into what he brings to the table here in a minute. But when Conte got fired from Chelsea, the feeling was, man, we're just going to keep this stupid cycle up. Like, Conte should have been given more time. He won the league his first year. That should buy you time. It didn't. And so you're like, I want the cycle to end. I want the cycle to end. And then, like, they bring in the new guy, like they brought in Sarri, and I was like, I want the cycle to end. Well, okay, I don't know about this guy yet, so maybe the cycle can continue a little bit more. I don't know if I necessarily want this guy to be the cycle breaker, but whatever. That's the biggest thing that hurts about all of this, is that we get to see other clubs in a similar position make what at the moment appears to be the smart decision. Hang on to Ole. Let Arteta have more time. And at the moment, that's bearing fruit. At the moment, it looks like a smart move. And you thought, man, maybe Chelsea are going to do the same thing. And they didn't. And I don't know when it's ever going to not be this way. And it just sucks. I think you had the perfect tweet about it when it happened. That, you know, the problem with hiring club legends is that you eventually have to fire that club legend.
Yeah. It's just you know it's almost inevitably going to happen, especially at a club like Chelsea, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're not a stepping stone club where you take the Chelsea job hoping to land some bigger gig. Like, you may get, you know, a club that's slightly bigger at some point if you find success there, but like, that's not the way it works. Like, you will leave on someone else's terms. And I think that's what's kind of maybe extra frustrating, especially from a Chelsea fan perspective here, is like, it makes no sense, right? Like, there's no, in some circumstances it does, right? Like, you can find justification for firing Sarri maybe, and, you know, maybe you can find some justification for firing Mourinho and some of the prior circumstances. But when you look at it over the course and the long term, it doesn't make sense. And you have to start almost wondering, like, man, does Roman feel like he has to keep up appearances here? Like, is this something he feels like he has to do when shit gets off the rails? Because he's not sure, like, well, if I don't do this, everyone's going to be judging me. Like, oh, has Roman lost his ruthlessness? Like, no, I need to show him I'm strong. It's a very Russian thing. I mean, gotta show that strength, and you do wonder if he's feeling the need to keep up the pressure in those circumstances.
Yeah, I think it kind of just comes down to Roman not seeing as much as he cared about Frank. And listen, Roman broke stride on how they've handled every other dismissal of a manager, in which the official statement from the club included a statement from Abramovich himself thanking Frank for everything and commenting on it, where he had never done that for Jose both times, for Conte, for Ancelotti. I mean, he doesn't do that. He didn't feel obligated to do that for any of those other guys. He did for Frank. So he did see there was a difference in what Frank was as far as what he meant to the club. But I think that's kind of where we're trying to pick the pieces together of like, what did go wrong to get us to where we are today? Not so much as far as like, how did what happened as far as like on field, but like, what were the dominoes to fall, and like, what were the perceptions that the board, that Abramovich, that Frank had on this whole situation as it went down? Everybody looks at what Frank did last year as a success, right? I mean, he took this in a transfer ban. He took this young club, brought in a bunch of, pushed through a bunch of academy players to the ranks, and finished 4th place. And there's a narrative coming out now that like is pushing back against that. Like, hey guys, like Abramovich and the board did not see that as a successful season.
Right.
As much as there was things working against Frank, there's just such a fine line about what is acceptable and not acceptable at Chelsea. So we're seeing that. It's interesting. There's a lot of talk about the division in the locker room that had existed. Frank gets 4th place last year. It's a relatively, again, most of us saw it as success. The board apparently didn't. Does it with this young English core. And then in the summer, the board goes out and brings in with, obviously Frank kind of has to give his blessing to an extent. He doesn't call the shots, but he's at least signing off on these moves. All these players from Germany and from Ajax being brought in. And Frank now has to take this English core that he liked, that he wanted to build off of, and then also bring in all of these new guys that he's just been given, and he's got to make it work. And you saw where apparently a lot of division happened with that English core, the people that were there last year that had kind of bought in on Frank, and then all these new guys that came in had not performed well. We're already kind of probably getting the side eye from Frank, probably already getting grilled in training about the performance not being where it needed to be. And then the further extent to that is guys like Rudiger, Christensen, Kepa, guys that basically were. Marcus Alonso was in a video today at Tuchel's training. Hadn't seen that guy in literally 3 months. Frank cast off these dudes. Like he had kind of his guys and guys that were not his guys. And it sounds like there was a lot of friction coming from that. Possibly some friction in some players questioning his managerial acumen. So that there was that. There's apparently, with Frank's big English core that he was building off of, that also led to, apparently over the summer, there were some true disagreements with Frank and the board as far as what transfers they both wanted. The board really sought out these moves with Timo and with Havertz, where they could, there was buyout clauses that they could get at a pretty decent price. You bring in a guy like Silva on a free, you make these moves that honestly, in the grand scheme of things, were relatively economical compared to what Frank wanted to do. He wanted to bring in Declan Rice. He wanted to bring in Jadon Sancho. Those were 2 extremely expensive transfers that the board turned down. Now that goes to kind of like the whole, like, Frank had this like young English core that he really cared about, and that's what he wanted to build. And the board has different plans for Chelsea. And so that, is another moment where we see that there appears to have been some real, a bit of a gap in understanding about what each side wanted the club to be. So I don't know. We're seeing now, and we're never going to get the true story, kind of where the cracks started to form.
Yeah. I wonder too, you think about we had Lampard now for what, a year. Prior to that we had Sarri for, 18 months. Prior to that we had Conte,
Sorry, was just there for one season. Yeah.
yeah, right. So you look at this. These are managers, well, who have similarities in some respects. None of them are the same. None of them have the same system. None of them have the same outlook or approach. And you start, we've talked through some of these signings and some of these guys who've been there for a while versus this newer crop of players. Guys maybe who Lampard wouldn't have brought in, but the board brought them in. And it really starts highlighting that there's no consistency. There's no message. There's no
Right.
overarching goal. There's no sporting director per se. I know that, someone like Marina Granovskia, like she runs that show, but she's not like a soccer person. This is a lot like what we talked about.
Right. That's what Peter Cech is supposed to be there for.
Yeah. But I mean, how influential has he been in that? And up until this point, like we
have no idea.
We see so. I mean, here's
his biggest contribution was getting blown up by. His biggest contribution so far was getting torched by a Spurs youth team.
No, but honestly, like he's being so influential in his role as sporting director. He's playing right now, right? Like that's Chelsea in a nutshell right now. And we've been highly critical of Manchester United's wheelings and dealings over the last, 10 years, or basically since Sir Alex left. When you hand the keys to the car to someone like David Gill, who knows nothing about running a soccer team and building a competitive world-class club, to handle really things that should be handled by someone who's an expert in sniffing these types of things out. And that to me, obviously Roman is the driver behind this equation, but it's not like they have someone who's going, okay, well, that guy didn't work out, let's try this one out instead. It's like, nah, this is the guy who impressed me the last time they talked to me when they were schmoozing at a bar or some event. And I think that's why Chelsea continue to find themselves in this situation, is they're never going to find an answer until they actually find an overarching goal to guide them.
Right. But to be fair, and I sort of had a list of like where Frank was culpable and where he failed. And like, he was just as part of a problem as what you're talking about there. Like, he himself, it never really stood out what kind of identity he wanted his Chelsea side to look like either.
Sure.
Like, I think he might have had an idea, but maybe a lot of it had to do with like the summer transfers. Like, that probably muddled it. But like, some of the squad, like some of the guys that were brought in, like, there's been a lack of like, this is where you're playing on the pitch. Like, even with, N'Golo Kante, like, Frank was asked a question and joked about it in his introductory press conference about like where Kante is supposed to play. And yet, to be fair, and Frank made the joke like, oh, I know where he needs to play. He hadn't been doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could circle this back around too. Like, we're dealing with a guy who's he had a year's experience with Derby County as a manager before he made the jump up to Chelsea. I mean, I'm not saying that Frank is faultless. Like, he's clearly made mistakes. His man management in the games, the way he's dealt with his squad, the way he's dealt with outliers or people who don't agree with him. Like, he's made lots of mistakes. And I think
I had that on my list too. Like, yeah.
The expectation should be he's inexperienced and he's gonna make mistakes. And if that wasn't what you were expecting, I don't know what you were expecting.
Right, and I think that also goes back to that original point. Like, if you weren't gonna give Frank Lampard time, why did you hire him? You knew his level of experience. You also knew what the first year of him being at the club was going to look like as far as kind of having to work with this young core and no transfers and everything like that. Like, you knew all these things, and yet you still stuck with your like, well, you get a year and some change, and if we don't think you can do it, you're out of here. But you did point out some things, and I had them on my list too. Like, Frank definitely had his favorites. He definitely had his favorites on his club. He definitely cast people off. I mean, so he has this row with Marcus Alonso in the West Brom match, like early in the season, and you legitimately never see Marcus Alonso again. Like, I always make that joke on Twitter, like, and we never saw him again. You legitimately he never made an 18 after that. Like, there was pictures and video of him at training today with Tuchel there, and I was like, holy crap, Marcus Alonso is still at Chelsea. Like, I thought he was gone. Like, I thought he literally went home to Madrid.
Just get me out.
Like, I thought he just or he had like the Floral Maludo treatment, and it was training with like the U23s. But so he had that. Like, he didn't know. He was very uncommitted on roles for a lot of the players, especially a lot of the new players.
Yeah.
And one thing, and I don't know if it's all on him. In fact, I think it's less on him and more of actually a problem that Tuchel is going to have to figure out just as much as Frank struggled to figure out. You got all these young guns, all these cool pieces you got from mainland Europe. Cool. This squad lacks a killer instinct in a way that previous Chelsea sides, more successful Chelsea sides, did not.
Yeah. There's no one really in the team that you feel confident is going to be able to develop into that at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're probably your toughest dude out there as far as like intensity is what, like, Silva? Like, and that's just because he's just an old ornery guy. Like, that's not even like like I don't see it. Like, I don't see that just kind of grit that a Chelsea side had. I mean, you look at just a couple years ago, that was one of the biggest things that like a Diego Costa brought to that team.
Mm-hmm.
Is that dude?
The win at all costs.
His energy.
Mentality.
Oh my goodness. And we just got a bunch of like young, talented, just super nice dudes, which is cool, I guess. But like, we need people. There needs to be that mentality, really, of any winning club of like, I'm gonna put my foot on your neck.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm going to.
You need a little bastard in your squad, like someone who's going to hold people accountable, not just the other team, but your own team, and isn't afraid to ruffle some feathers along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he did do a few things that are very positive. Obviously, navigating last season and getting them back into Champions League and all that was huge. And the other aspect of that is like, Frank, Chelsea has had this amazing academy that has been very successful for over a decade now. And up until Frank last year, those dudes, unless your name was John Terry, an academy kid, had not really seen the first team in any meaningful bit. And you had Frank really create or show a path to the first team from the academy that hadn't really existed for years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good thing. What Tuchel does with that, who knows? I don't know what to think going forward with Tuchel. That's kind of the next thing, is like, what he brings a lot of experience. He brings the fact that he's worked, at like a PSG where it was a bit of a pressure cooker. You could draw your own conclusions of how well that went. With his Dortmund experience, he has experience with young talent, which is what Dortmund thrives on.
Yeah.
He's already managed two of the players in the starting 11. He just finished managing Silva last year. He knows Pulisic very well. They seem to have a pretty good rapport with one another. He's also, fairly familiar with the other Bundesliga stars that now exist at Chelsea. You hope that that's all a beneficial thing. Sometimes I feel like a lot of that's like this whole, like, there's all these articles that came out of like the importance of a German speaking manager for Chelsea. And it's like, I don't know. A lot of that just kind of sounds a bit superficial.
It totally is. They have translators literally standing out there helping everyone out.
Right.
I mean, look, of course you want your manager to speak to you in a language you can feel comfortable in and communicate in, but come on. Let's not oversell something that doesn't need to be oversold.
I mean that's really cool that your midfield and attack, can speak German to you. Your goalkeeper and half of your defense kind of speaks French, so
it's kind of like German, right?
You're not really solving much, right? Oh, totally.
Germans and French totally get along as well.
Historically, yes. Obviously, I guess he brings a more defined, or maybe the word would be refined, tactics. He has a bit of an idea of what he actually wants to do. Where, again, as we kind of talked about it, like, okay, I think Frank wanted them to be like, pacey and pressing, but like, did we always see that? Did that always get, put on paper? I feel like Tuchel obviously is going to bring a little bit more of a formulated game plan.
I mean, you'd suspect he would. Doesn't mean that it's going to be effective, or better than what Lampard was producing. And again, this goes back to like, well, before Lampard, we had Sarri, right? Like,
Sarri ball.
Like Sarri ball is a very specific style that's nothing like what they're playing now. And
remember, we were allegedly going to change our entire like system from the first team all the way to the academy to play Sarri ball.
Yeah,
and that lasted 1 year.
Not in the 18-month windows that FC or the Chelsea find themselves rearranging every so often. It's just it's difficult to predict because the outliers aren't even known yet.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of wrote down here, kind of my first big thing is like, realistically, what can Tuchel do with this side the rest of the way through? I mean, the window, so the January window ends literally in like a day or a couple days.
Yeah.
So he's not bringing anybody in. So between now and the end of the season, he's kind of got to work with what's there. Maybe he there's talk about, and again, it's like, is this just because this is a German that like Rudiger is going to be back in the 11, that, he'll have a more figured out plan to get Timo back in the scoring department. Hey, hopefully. But like, what realistically can he do as far as like putting his stamp on this side and getting them in a satisfactory position come the end of the season?
I don't know. I mean, I think the expectation is get us back into the Champions League, right? Like, I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
They are making this changeover at this point.
That's a tough road.
It is, but I mean, think how chaotic everything has been. Like the number of people we've seen at the top, the number of times we've seen that change at the top. Teams that were out of contention a month ago are in contention now, and vice versa. So I think anything's possible in this Premier League season. And look, I think a new manager bounce might even be enough to carry you over the line.
I'm ready. So we're recording. This is Tuesday night. They play a match tomorrow on Wednesday. Tuchel passed his
sacked by Thursday, right, Tuchel?
Exactly. Bring on I don't know, Goose Hiddick, I guess.
Again, why not?
Again, third time.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see what he does with this lineup. Because I guess, I mean, you got to imagine. So he was at training today, which whatever that's worth. But this lineup, you got to figure he's literally just going to go off of what he just perceives about the talent he's been given, right?
Oh, I mean, you'd think. Maybe
Like,
maybe he's studied up and is ready to go.
yeah, I mean, yeah. Listen, there is speculation that Tuchel was informed by Chelsea to prepare himself for the role as early as the Manchester City loss a couple weeks ago. So he's possibly had some time. You know, it's again, it's more like the stuff that's trickling out, and it's like, is this real? Is this not? Allegedly, that Arsenal loss right at Christmas time,
yeah,
kind of put everything in motion as far as the board going like, okay, we need a plan because I don't think this is going to work. And then the City match was like allegedly either like kind of pushed that thing into hyperdrive. And then the Leicester City match was like, okay, that's it. We are officially done.
Yeah. That was
which is crazy. The FA Cup match this year was like, or this weekend was like a lame duck match for Frank. And some people like wonder if Frank actually knew that. And that like, that's why like Mason Mount got the captain's armband. Was like, that was like his outgoing move. Cause you know, his fatherly affinity for Mason Mount. Yeah, maybe that was like his parting shot.
He's gonna stuff him into a suitcase and take him with him.
Yeah, it's just kind of reward Mason, the one true son that stayed loyal to him all the way up to the end. Give him that captaincy.
Yeah, right.
So here's a question for you: where does Frank go next?
MLS.
I was gonna say Celtic.
Oh
Him and
man,
Stevie
that
G
would
renewed
be
rivalry.
amazing. That would truly.
Oh, because I mean, Neil Lennon is getting fired in like the next, I don't know, 48 hours.
Oh yeah, it's a good spot, and putting him opposite of Gerrard over at Rangers. Oh, it's a tasty little affair. Who has the Scottish rights here in the U.S.? I want to be able to watch that.
ESPN Plus just grabbed him.
Yes.
So we're in.
News.
We're in like Flynn. We got it. It's gonna be awesome. So I think either that. I wonder if come the end of the season, a surviving Premier League side, your Crystal Palace, your Fulham's not going to survive, so not them. Someone down there towards the bottom that survives. Yeah, Crystal Palace for some reason just jumps out to me. Is like, if they just survive, that probably does it for Roy Hodgson. Like, he definitely hit his ceiling with the club.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they look to move on, look to kind of go for a little bit of a youth movement there, which is basically anybody under 70. And Frank, maybe Frank goes there. The MLS thing is intriguing. Like, man, if only NYCFC had known about this, maybe they could have positioned themselves on that one.
Oh, we could have gone that.
Did they have them? They hired someone, right? Someone, right? They have a manager.
Yeah, I think so. Who knows?
I'm trying to think. No one's really MLS managerial spots are all sewn up for the heading into the season, I believe, right?
They mostly are at this point. In fact, let's use that as a quick transition over to Major League Soccer, because we don't know a whole lot about what's going on there, and we'll come back around to a match that was pretty big for us over the weekend, or at least we got the
save the date card from MLS.
Yeah, but we now know that we're going to get MLS in April at a minimum. We're going to get it in April. Yeah, hooray!
So basically, about a month after the normal start date, right?
Yeah, and we're going to see the teams report at the end of February. I think February 22nd, I think was the date that they had circled for when teams are allowed to report. So yeah, we're going to get less MLS, at least from a spring standpoint. We may see a full season try to be achieved in some other fashion still. But yeah, I mean, we have a start date, if nothing else, which should hopefully help teams to nail down players and other needs they might have to address before they actually, start playing
You don't
games.
know of any clubs that have needs, do you?
I couldn't think of anything like the one here in Cincinnati that repetitively makes it known that they're chasing after big name players, but they just can't make it happen, apparently. No, I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, I do. It is surprising, and obviously FC Cincinnati has swung and missed on a few um, marquee signings that 1,000% didn't happen. But like, we talked about this last week with the transfer window and just kind of the pandemic economics. It is surprising the amount like there's been some decent like big money moves in MLS.
Oh
Like the
yeah.
Whitecaps just brought in a big name. You had Chicago, made that big move. I want to say there's a few other clubs that are like trying to court some decent young, not talent. Um, I was a little surprised, like kind of looking over the transfer list of like, oh yeah, like there's actually been some money spent here in MLS for a league that had that needs attendance, had none of it, and will continue to not have any for a bit.
And
Um,
and is
they seem to be
continuing to
spending a lot.
claim. Well, and I think that's what's extra frustrating is you see these big name players coming into MLS. At the same time, they're trying to basically threaten the pulling of the force majeure clause in their contract with the players union, which basically would say we can't pay any of the money we've promised to all of you, um, because of extenuating circumstances, while at the same time cutting, humongous checks for big name players to come and show up and play in MLS, or big name coaches to come and coach in MLS. Whether you want to consider Phil Neville a big name coach is up to you, but regardless, like it feels extra rich watching the same people who are doling out those contracts then turn around and say, well, we can't commit to paying you guys what we promised already.
Yeah, because and that does the MLS Players Union is a bit weird because while it represents all players and the policies affect all players, the reality is the MLS Players Association exists for the not big name signings because they're the ones that really need the representation to make sure that they're proper wages and that they're being treated well because the big money DP people, they're going to be taken care of. Like, they're going to be fine. Exceptions will be made. Stuff will be handled. They're going to be fine.
That's why
It's the
we
guy.
that's why we
Yeah,
rarely hear from them in these situations.
right. I mean, do they even know? Like, do they even know that they're part of a like? Does does Jurgen Lacadia know that he is a member of the MLS Players Association?
He barely knows he's here,
Is
so
that just
probably
junk mail
not.
to him that he throws out, or what?
Maybe, maybe. Yeah, it's just it is an interesting thing seeing all those big names filter in. But you'd anticipate that as this date is now set and there's a number that people are working towards as far as the countdown goes, until they're able to begin their preparations for the upcoming season, you would hope this is going to set the wheels in motion and that we're going to start seeing things drop here in Cincinnati in the very near term. Otherwise, you can start carving up a spoon for next year.
Can't wait. Might as well do it anyways.
Yeah.
The big question though, the most important question, the thing you and you probably even more so, really want to know: when is Kit Week? When are kids
Ooh.
getting released?
Yeah, and we've seen some information start to leak out about the color schemes that we're going to see teams use. I've not even managed to get my eyes on any catalogs yet either, which is kind of odd. I normally have figured out a way to get that to happen by now, and I think a lot of that is the uncertainty. Like maybe teams were feeling like we shouldn't release anything if we're going to have another weirdo season. Like we don't want to
Yeah.
have, a bunch of dates where we're playing in these new kits that we were hoping to sell a bunch a bunch of, if we're not actually going to have anyone at the stands to actually purchase them. So
Was
I
it?
think
Is
the
it?
uncertainty
Is
is
it
driving a lot of
karma? Is it karma that the year that they do that weird 3-stripe pattern on all the kits that nobody liked, and it ended up being a year where nobody went to games and thus very few people probably bought jerseys?
Oh yeah, I mean definitely jersey sales were down for a bit, and I can't imagine the gambit that a lot of people disliked ended up paying dividends for Adidas, especially in that climate.
Yeah, I mean, I did just buy last year's away kit for $10 at the outlet mall the other day.
Mm, I mean that's a steal.
I mean, at those kind of prices, I can't say no.
It's hard to argue with that.
All right, let's get into the wrong side of the pond derby we had.
Yeah, not very often that we get to talk about this derby. Our two sides in the Premier League clash at least twice a
Second
year.
time ever.
Yeah, but the second time ever, at least while we've been doing this show over the last 8 years, has been seeing my Spurs come up against your Wycombe Wanderers. Now, to give our fans who are maybe newer or aren't as familiar with the background here, the reason why you follow Wycombe dates back to something directly on this show a few years ago
Right.
when we took the gig with the Cincinnati Saints, who were then in the American Fourth Division, to do their commentary for their web streams and actual television broadcasts. We decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we also both picked a team in England's Fourth Division to follow along with this season? And you had this great interaction where Wycombe basically volunteered themselves to you, and you've become like this ingratiated part of the Wycombe community. You're probably like that American guy, like in the Wycombe ranks.
I am a bit. Yeah, there's not too many of us that don't like physically own the club that are the American guys. Uh, because we do now have American owners at Wycombe that hail from New Orleans, which is why our keeper was rocking a purple, yellow, and green keeper kit. We do have a Mardi Gras keeper kit in honor of our owners.
Very nice.
But yeah, no, like I guess I am part of the community. I've even started a quasi supporters group. It's basically just me so far. But if you'd like to join, feel free. It's good times. We started this when Wycombe was in the fourth division, as you mentioned, League Two. They are not in League Two anymore. Since becoming a fan, I now am a fan of a championship side. They've made it all the way to the second tier, where they find themselves this season. Doesn't look like it's going to last, but they're there right now.
Yeah, it counts for the time being.
We're 10 points away from safety at the moment, so it's not looking great. But it's been awesome to be a part of it and to kind of have that constant interaction and connection with this club. I actually got to do like a feature in a match day program a few years back. It's been a cool relationship, one that's meant a lot to me, one that's been very fun. But yeah, it literally just started from just a goofy idea we had on this podcast.
Yeah. So fast forward to today, the second meeting we've had, and this match unfolded in a way that was very similar to the first one. Like,
yeah,
we meet in the cup. Expectations are we will roll you minnows, and both times you guys really put us on ice because just as in the last meeting, Spurs found themselves behind and trailing the minnows that are Wycombe, and I laughed. Like when you guys scored, I laughed. I immediately laughed and went, "What the hell?" And knew we were going to be in for like a roller coaster for the rest of the match after that point.
Yeah, it was wild that we ended up scoring first. I mean, you guys definitely had a few opportunities early. In the first half alone, you guys hit like the crossbar several times. Had a bunch of very close calls. There's one where it hit off the crossbar and then like flew back at our keeper, who luckily somehow got hands to it instead of letting it just bounce off of him and go into the goal. It was dicey. It was exactly how I thought it would. But then like we score this goal and we get late into the first half, and it's like, dang, we're gonna take a lead into the halftime. You guys score like right before halftime, just in stoppage time in the first half. You guys get on the goal. Gareth Bale, is that his first one since coming back, or has he had a few more?
No, he's had a few more. That's his third, but it tells you the kind of impact he's had since arriving from Madrid in the summer on loan.
Yeah, it was a nice ball in that he really, all he had to do was just kind of redirect it to it go above the keeper, because it was still going in on goal. He just had to kind of just tip it over the keeper. Worked anyways. Second half, again, like you guys are pressing. You start bringing in the big guns. Kane shows up. Son comes in. It's looking like you guys are going to take over the match, but Wycombe keeps hanging in there. But much like the previous meeting, we try and hold the line for about 85 minutes, and then we let go.
Yeah.
And last time we let go and you guys scored 2 goals late to win 4-2. In this one, we let go and you guys scored 3 goals in a matter of I blinked and we already had given up 2 goals. It ends up being 4-1 final, a flattering scoreline for you guys.
Very flattering. I mean, it really papers over a absolute ton of cracks in Spurs performance. It really does make you wonder, like, holy crap, Mourinho, you don't have to sit in against everyone. In fact, you shouldn't sit in against freaking, no offense taken, but a truly club that you should be able to play off the pitch in 99% of all circumstances. So it's a testament to the magic of the cup. It's so intense, the magic itself, that it clouds Jose Mourinho's judgment so that he continues to do the same things that never work.
But that Sissoko guy looked really good.
Yeah, he did. He looked great.
It's always fun when Wycombe gets put on center stage like this, because like there is definitely some quirkiness to the Wycombe Wanderers. So Wycombe Wanderers, or as our nickname is, we are the Chair Boys, which right there, that's definitely something that will pique some people's interest.
Already weird.
Our manager is also amazing. It was really great. Like, he got to do so much cool press heading into this match. The Daily Mail did a feature on him. The Football Ramble did a big interview with him. Sky had some stuff on him. Gareth Ainsworth was really given a star treatment, which was really cool for him. He's an amazing manager. He absolutely deserves it. he's also just not your typical manager. As Mourinho is wearing, your typical training, gear with the long coat. Our manager Gareth Ainsworth rocks a leather like biker jacket, jeans, and some stylish boots with a Guns N' Roses bandana for his face mask.
Oh, it was
and
amazing.
his
It was
long.
amazing. Yeah. If there was a meme that was, giving any sort of Bernie-ish vibes, over the last week in the soccer world, it was this one. Like everyone was on Ainsworth for looking like a crap Alice in Chains, right? Like there's just a load of different directions to take this, and yeah, I mean that's what's great about. Again, we don't have to get ourselves into a situation where we're pontificating on this, but that's what's great about this competition. Like you get Gareth Ainsworth pairing up against, or Gareth Ainsworth pairing up against, Jose Mourinho, and we're not just comparing them on their managerial credentials, but also their fashion ones.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do love like when Ainsworth gets the spotlight because he is just such a novelty to the rest of the footballing world, and I just love to see everybody just kind of get a day to enjoy it the way that we do, week in and week out. He should be managing at a bigger club, honestly. I hope he doesn't. I hope he stays at Wycombe forever. He's really the club's identity over the last several years, and I hope it stays that way. But like that dude deserves the accolades and the press that he got this week. So if nothing else, we didn't get the win. We didn't even get the advantage normally of having a big club in where you get to pack out the stadium, upcharge those tickets, get a big gate, and financially benefit from it. We didn't get that, but we got our name in lights. We got our manager, being the star on TV, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean it was an experience. And your club's had a lot of those over the last few years, but it doesn't diminish this one at all. And there's plenty to build from in this type of circumstance, and they'll give themselves hope. Like maybe they can use this as a means to inspire them to not get the drop this year after climbing their way up into the championship. I mean, who knows? But
yeah, well, it's a single focus now.
It's a likable bunch, and I feel like you get a lot of the neutrals energy here.
Oh, I think so. I think we should get some people to hop on board. Winners and wankers?
I think that's where we're at. Give us your wanker this week.
My wanker, and we glossed over some shortcomings and some announcements that have not been made with the club in town, but an announcement was made at a different club in MLS that really highlighted a problem with the club in our city. Austin FC, their stadium has a name. DJ, what's our stadium's name?
It's named after the neighborhood it's in.
But like, what's the what? I mean, this is America. This is 2021. Like, what's that good corporate sponsor name that's on that stadium? What we got?
It must be the West End Corporation. Right?
It's a great corporation.
Yes,
we don't have our stadium naming rights.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what it is.
This is not great.
No,
this stadium is months away from opening. I mean, literally just mere months from opening. And it doesn't actually have a real name.
I want to get with you here. I really do. But you look, Spurs don't have a name on their stadium yet.
That's fine.
Yeah. They can weather this global pandemic, right?
Yeah, I mean, is there a stadium in MLS that doesn't have a naming right to it? Anymore, at least. I know Crew Stadium obviously didn't for the longest time.
Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of one. I'm almost certain there has to be, right?
I don't think there
Yes.
is.
In fact, I know San Jose Stadium dropped Avaya as a sponsor after last.
Well, okay.
And now they're San Jose.
But they had them. But they had one.
It did. Yeah, I suppose that's true.
I mean, that's not good news that they no longer have one. That's a bad scene. But like they at least had one when they turned the lights on for the first time.
Well, remember how FC Cincinnati was suing the company they were working with to help them get sponsors in for things like the stadium naming rights?
Yeah, I guess that might cause some problems.
Yeah, probably makes other companies a little hesitant to work with them, I'd imagine.
Yeah, probably. It's just it's disappointing that like that's just one more thing that this club that had so much inertia behind it heading into MLS is failing to do.
Get in line.
Along with putting together a competent roster and a staff that knows what's going on.
There you go.
Who's your wanker?
My wanker, I'm going from the lows of FC Cincinnati to the heights of Real Madrid, who got knocked out of the Copa del Rey this week by Segunda B, third tier side Alcoyano, whose annual budget is just 700,000 euros. Madrid probably have 10 guys on their roster that's their annual wages, like let alone the entire budget for the club. So yeah, Madrid, you deserve that. I don't know if you're watching what's going on in Spain right now. Madrid are in what they're describing as a financial crisis. Barcelona literally missed payments to their players this past month. They're
on the verge of bankruptcy, right?
Yeah, Barcelona
is about to just burn down to the ground.
Yeah. So just keep your eye on Spanish football. It is a bit of a trash fire right now. Everyone's obviously facing pandemic issues, but those pandemic issues have really made the roost come home, and it's not a good situation that's unfolding in Spain at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this last week. Like La Liga was already a bit of a financial house of cards, and when something like this happens to the entire world economy, that house comes tumbling down.
Yeah, not a good sign at all. Let's get away from the glum things. What about your winner?
My winner, I'm just a sucker for good goal celebrations. And did you see Weston McKennie's this week? He did a Harry Potter celebration. Apparently he's just a big Harry Potter fan.
And admitted to it too. Like that's what it was about.
Oh yeah, owned it. Like, hey, that's Harry Potter I'm doing right there.
Look, you don't do goal celebrations.
Big Harry Potter.
Are very clear Harry Potter mockings unless you're actually a big Harry Potter fan.
So I just love that. I got a kick out of the fact that he did a Harry Potter celebration.
My winner this week is also nice and warm and fuzzy, and this one goes to Catarina Marcario, the American youngster who recently was declared eligible after being born in Brazil. Gets her second start again against the rematch against Colombia for the women's national team, and she got on the score sheet. Looked really good and continues to build the hype train around herself. So congrats to Catarina.
Yeah, I was a little worried that U.S. women's national team just wasn't going to have enough talent to pick from.
No, they definitely didn't need or needed one of the brightest stars in world football to sign up for them.
Always starving for that young talent is the U.S. women's national team. Right. Yeah, that's the show.
That it is. Thanks for tuning in this week. Despite not having as much football to talk about, hopefully we won't spend near as much time talking about Frank on next week's show, at least if I get my way and not Jeremy.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Unless he takes that Celtic gig, and then we're going wall-to-wall coverage.
All right. Looking forward to it.
All right, folks.
See ya.